election headquarters. This is KAMR Local 4 News.
Welcome back to your local election headquarters. Sorry, making sure we had everything on. A little bit of hesitation there from me, but we are back. David, introduce our guest.
Oh, we're here for our second live tonight with Dr. David Rausch from WT, the Teel Bivins Professor of Political Science. I know we usually have you on for election night. Thanks for coming by.
Sure, not a problem. It's been a while since I've been in the studio because of COVID and all that fun stuff. But
go ahead and keep chatting. I'm going to put your mic towards your voice.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. I do sound like I'm talking in a shoe.
Well, thanks for being here.
Sure.
So we were talking a little bit before we went live about how you have kind of a unique perspective on the election because you serve election day at a voting location.
Yep.
What was different this year about serving in the election location than years past?
Well, and I haven't done it much for local elections in years past. I've pretty much just been the sort of the presidential election that one year, and then last year with the statewide races. But you usually think of local elections as having low turnout, low energy, low excitement. Typically, there's a lot of actually, like in Canyon, for example, we didn't have an election for the city government. Mm-hmm. So that having people actually coming in, people were coming in to vote, is kind of funny, though. It was almost like one person turned in and someone else saw them turn in, so there'd be like 5 coming in. And then we'd sit there for about 20 minutes, and then 2 more would come in. And so it wasn't like steady all day. I know they picked up a lot of voters during early voting, so that probably, it is a Saturday, family day, hanging out with your family, going to sporting events, all that type of stuff, that it was probably not as high a turnout as I was expecting, but it was definitely more voters than I was expecting.
Absolutely, and we were also talking about how there's been a little bit more, I guess, hubbub, for lack of a better word, or like excitement surrounding this particular election. I know I've seen a lot more campaign signs, a lot more rhetoric from the general community about this particular election.
And it's interesting because there was a little bit, you could see it at the I wouldn't say the edges, but sort of some of the candidates were a little bit better at elect me and here's what I'm going to do, and others were like, I'm not them.
Sure.
And I know sometimes voters get turned off with the I'm not them type of races, particularly in nonpartisan races. So it's easy to say, don't vote for the Democrats or whatever if you're nonpartisan. But it was just, and it really depends on the race too. Like the Amarillo City races were a little different than, say, the school board races, or even a little bit with not so much Amarillo College Board of Regents is not the most exciting campaign, in large part because many people didn't know they have a board of regents.
Sure.
I thought WT had a board of regents. We do. It's just not here. It's down in College Station. But so that's definitely having more candidates and things. I don't know how we in 2 years how we do it again. Do we have to sweep out everybody and try it again? We'll have to see, and it also depends on what's the performance then in the next. It's only 2 years, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge.
Sure. And before I forget, I know I can go and have conversation with you, but
Sure.
for folks who have, just tuned in and want some results, we still only have early voting and absentee voting out right now. Right now, for the City of Amarillo races, Cole Stanley is leading the pack in the mayor race with about 76% of the vote. Place 1 right now, Josh Kraft is leading the pack with 44% of the vote, with Dean Crump coming up behind him with 34.3% of the vote. If it stays this way, it would result in a runoff, but we're getting more data later. So we'll have to see if that one stays as close as it is. At place 2, Don Tips is leading the pack with 85.7% of the vote.
Wow.
Place 3, Tom Sherlin is leading with 59.5% of the vote. And then place 4, Les Simpson is leading with 46.7% of the vote, which is not a majority quite yet. Claudette Smith is behind Les Simpson with 22.9% of the vote. What are your, initial thoughts on the way things are, shaken out with early voting and absentee thus far?
Well, it's interesting with the number of candidates running for mayor that you have someone who has well over 50%. Even in the early, that bodes well for that position. But the thing I think is most challenging is if we have a runoff for like one of the places, well, that turnout for that runoff election, you might as well bring your knitting. You'll be knitting all day. It won't be a whole lot of turnout. It might be early voting turnout, but as you get runoffs in smaller and smaller races, it really becomes. That's why a lot of cities have decided to adopt instant runoff elections or the ranked choice type election. But in the state of Texas, we're not allowed to do that in cities. I don't know how that lawsuit is going. There's one in to allow Austin to adopt that, but I don't know where that case is right now. I actually have other work to do. To distract municipal court, or not municipal court, but cases involving municipal governments. So.
Trust me, I feel that for sure in this job. And just a look at some other races that we're keeping an eye on. In Potter County, for Amarillo College Board of Regents, what we were talking about earlier, we still have the same early voting numbers. Michelle Fortunato is leading in Potter County with 25.7% of the vote. And then we have Jay Barrett and Irene Hughes in Potter County. And then in Randall County, we have Jay Barrett and Irene Hughes, and Michelle Fortunato also kind of being around the 23%-ish. So those are two incumbents, and then another person who's brand new. So that'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out.
Yeah, and I mean, that one's a little different because it's really just the top three.
Yes.
Plus they have cumulative voting. So some of those candidates might be one person voting 3 times for them or 3 people voting 1 time for them. So it's always interesting to look at. For a number of years, I've been looking at the actual breakdown. I tried to collect the ballots and actually looked at the data, but once again, that takes a lot of time. And one of the things political science professors typically don't have at a school like WT is time.
Sure.
Yeah, because unless you start roping in students with today's boring work is you're going to sit there and type 1117, 113. And that most students don't want to do that.
Sure. And then with Amarillo ISD, which also has cumulative voting in Potter County, we have John Mark Ballou leading with 24%. We have Steve Trafton with 21.4% of the vote. And then we have a little bit of a gap, and then we have a bunch who are about between 10 and 14. Connie Brown is currently in the 3rd place in Potter County with 14.5%. In Randall County, John Mark Ballou is also leading with 28.44%. We have Steve Trafton with 21.5, and then we have Connie Brown with 16.49. But like we were talking about, those are cumulative, so it's the first 3 spots.
Yep, whoever's the 1 through 3, you don't get bonus points for coming in number 2 on that one. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And I always it's funny when you look at the map though how little of AISD is in Randall County. Most of it's in Potter County, but probably the turnout is better in Randall County. And that's a demographic thing.
With turnout just being better in Randall County.
Yep, socioeconomic status and diversity and things like that.
And with that, what's interesting to me about Amarillo ISD, and granted, with the caveat, early voting, absentee, the 2 incumbents who are running in Amarillo ISD are not in the top 3. So we may have a 3 brand new folks on the boards, but we'll have to see how that shakes out. I mean, I guess, talk to me a little bit about how you think with going back to the city of Amarillo, with a potential incumbent, being the mayor, but having a whole brand new city council, how could that shake out, I guess, Amarillo politics as a whole?
Well, interesting thing, everybody will be brand new. I mean, even the mayor will be, they're an incumbent as a city council person. They were on the council before, but not as the mayor position. So even the mayor will be new. And it's really difficult. We, of course, are a council manager system, which I'm sure we'll hear a lot about as we perhaps try to change that. That's one of the rumors that buzzed around that we need to get rid of. We had to have an elected mayor, and they need to do all the work. And it's like, but a professional city manager knows how to do this stuff better. So and that's just my personal bias. But it is... it'll be interesting to see. You have it's a learning, and they Amarillo residents pretty much shot themselves in the foot about 2 years ago when they maybe it's already 3 years ago, getting close to 4, when they got rid of when they killed the proposition to allow for longer terms. There was an attempt to have their terms go to 4 years.
That's right.
And so now we'll have 2 years. They'll have 2 years. They got to hit the ground running, and hopefully it won't be a splat when they hit the ground.
And I mean, we could very much be in this same position 2 years from now, depending on how this whole thing goes.
And I would certainly hope, that's one of the problems that we have a lot of citizens pay attention during elections, not during the rest of the time. And so it might be nice to have that same energy and excitement all the time. And unfortunately, as my mother points out to me, not everybody does that for a job. Not everybody's a political scientist. Little Davy. Why she calls me Davy, I don't know. But she doesn't call my brother Tom. Well, she does call him Tommy, but it's just one of those things where I'm always informed that not everybody's a political scientist.
And what's interesting about that, because I've had the same issues. I go up to my friends and be like, "Hey, have you voted? Have you paid attention?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Wait,
There's an election?"
Yeah, exactly. So it is interesting that it'll be interesting to see if folks pay attention more with this brand new council, with all the excitement surrounding this some of these particular candidates, to see if it continues.
And is it a positive excitement or is it a negative excitement?
So
we're going to go out there and get them. And so you got them. Okay, now what are you going to do with them once you got them?
And there's been a lot of excitement as well surrounding the school board races. We've been talking about that, with how political some of these candidates have been. I mean, how could that change the way school board, board of regents approach their overall job?
Well, and I think there is a lot of, I don't know if you want to say that some of the candidates were looking more micromanaging. It's always interesting in Texas and probably in most other states, most school board candidates are, for example, my dad was on a school board for a long time while he was a teacher in a different district. So there are usually a lot of retired teachers, a lot of former teachers. Sometimes they're running, they may not be in that same district, they may live in a different district, but they're running in their home district. It's just interesting that the candidates who run and then why they run. And now we really have we're going to go out there and make sure we purge the library of all the naughty books. Maybe that's a better term for calling that party than what I was calling them, in a naughty book party. And so it's interesting. I know my wife recently got back from the Texas Library Association, and there was some buzzing, but I fully expected, and I should have gone probably. I could have rabble-roused a little bit with the librarians. How do you rabble-rouse a librarian?
In a difficult way.
Yeah, it does take you talk loudly in a room or something, but it is interesting that I went to a school board meeting recently, and I learned a few things that I didn't know, and I don't have kids. I don't have kids in school, so I don't really pay as much attention. But this idea that the schools are isolating parents, I don't think is quite true. It's just the parents sometimes don't, if you barely graduated from high school yourself and you have like 6 kids in school now, and how comfortable are you trying to walk in there? I want to learn how my son learns math. Now, someone like me, I just walk up there and say, hey, I want to find out what you're talking about in government class now. Mm-hmm. And usually it's like, well, come in, Dr. Rausch. Maybe it's the doctor part.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. No, actually, I think about that all the time.
So with that, I mean, we have multiple candidates. We did this whole questionnaire. If you haven't looked at it on myhighplains.com, with we asked about in our questions. Some of these candidates were like, I am a community member. My grandparent or my grandkids, my kids are in, and I wanted to get involved and realized they're doing this, and I don't agree with it. Yeah. So it's that pipeline of I see what my kids or grandkids are doing. I don't agree with it. I want to make a change, and that's why some of these folks were running initially.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And that's definitely, and it's commendable. One of the things that I might do, though, before I decide to run is maybe, first of all, a couple of years ago when there were candidates, people running for Canyon School Board, there was actually a question about, should they attend school board meetings? Well, yes. Anyone who's thinking about running should at least go to 5. And I don't care what 5, when they are. But then, and I actually even asked my dad, who was on a school board for about 25, maybe 30 years. And so he was under the idea, even if you run for city council, you should go to a city council meeting 3, 4, 5, just to see what goes on. Are you going to be good for that? But yeah, it's interesting. Why do you run? And you can ask all these candidates that. Why do you run? And why didn't you run? And it's always more fun to ask the folks who were looking at running but didn't run. Why didn't they run?
Absolutely. And real quick before we go, we have some slight updated numbers from Amarillo about the Amarillo races. They look pretty similar to what they were. But Cole Stanley leading the pack for mayor with 75.2% of the vote. We have Josh Kraft still in the lead with 43.4% of the vote, with Dean Crump having 33.7% of the vote. Place 2, Don Tips for 84.5% of the vote. Place 3, Tom Sherlin with 58.5% of the vote. And last, Les Simpson with place 4, 46.1% of the vote. and Claudette Smith right behind him with 23% of the vote. Dr. Rausch, thank you so much for joining us and talking about these a lot of races, a lot of different topics with us. I really appreciate it.
Why they put an election right in the middle of finals week, I don't know, but I'm going to talk to someone about that.
I also want to say thank you for being here. Really good conversation. You're a funny man. So I appreciate you coming in here and bringing a little bit of light in here. Comedic timing on point, man.
It may have something to do with sleep deprivation, but we'll have to see how I am tomorrow when I'm grading papers, but I may not be as funny.
Well, we appreciate everyone who is watching this. Of course, we will continue our election coverage throughout the evening. We'll see you back here in a moment.